And which dimension of masculinity are we talking about? Does he lack a plan or approach to protecting you in varying scenarios that he hesitates to make decisions for? Does he lack employment or hesitate to make critical decisions pertaining to his income or personal financial planning as would be necessary to provide for you? Does he lack the will to take the lead in the bedroom? Does he even know how to sexually excite you enough to do so without hesitation? One of my Facebook fans says, I do have a question. If you post it, please keep it anonymous. I would love advice on my situation. What can I do as a wife to encourage my husband's masculinity? He is introverted, passive, low self-esteem, not sure if he realizes this, and leaves me to take the lead in everything. In small things and critical things, it all falls on me. This is hard on me, of course, and I know it can't be good for him either. So what can I do to encourage him in a loving, respectful, and effective way to start being the man of the house? Thanks, Mike. Appreciate you and love your post about your response to your daughter and the pride flag. Before I answer this question, let us define our terms. What even is masculinity? I personally define masculinity as the modality of protecting, providing, and procreating functional families, and thus, by extension, our civilization. Right? Those are the three dimensions: protect, provide, and procreate. So, whenever one speaks of improving a man's masculinity, juxtapose the symptoms with each dimension as a checklist. Right? For instance, when you say he hesitates to make decisions, in which dimension of masculinity are we talking about? Does he lack a plan or approach to protecting you in varying scenarios that he hesitates to make decisions for? Does he lack employment or hesitate to make critical decisions pertaining to his income or personal financial planning as would be necessary to provide for you? Does he lack the will to take the lead in the bedroom? Does he even know how to sexually excite you enough to do so without hesitation? Right now, you have indicated that he hesitates to take the lead in general with low self-esteem, which deductively leads me to believe that he is lacking in all three dimensions of masculinity, which leads me to believe that there is a more significant holistic issue at play here. There's the biological aspect of masculinity and a metaphysical Maslowian aspect of masculinity. Right? So by Maslowian, I mean to refer to the Maslowian pyramid of self-actualization. So what you're actually asking me, or how I choose to interpret your question rather, is how can I help my husband achieve the full actualization of his character, which would involve his masculinity? So to solve your problem, let's start at the bottom of the pyramid and work our way up. Right? Does he have his basic physiological needs met? In this context, I mean things like your husband's testosterone levels, serotonin, or any possible vitamin deficiencies that truly do make a huge difference in his personality. You can't expect him to be very ambitious or more territorial or to take charge in either life or the bedroom if his testosterone levels are in the toilet due to unmet physiological needs that he may not even be consciously aware of. Right? So one of the greatest things that my wife did for me when we met in China, and by the way, if you're new to the video, she's not Chinese. She's actually Latvian. We were two English teachers that met in China. She's European, not Chinese. But we met in Asia. Right? So one of the greatest things that my wife did for me was observe how I was essentially overclocking my body every day. I was performing hardcore physical training every week. I was surviving in the mountains, which you can see the pictures and videos of on my Facebook account. Yet I had a series of horrible dietary habits that influenced a lot of my own performance as a male and even my own personality that I was in denial about. Right? I came to our relationship pre-installed with these bad habits due to childhood abuse. I was just simply used to functioning without all of my Maslowian needs met. But I simply because I was psychologically used to it, to not having all of my Maslowian needs met, didn't mean that I was correct in allowing these issues to remain. Therefore, my wife played a huge influential role in making gradual changes, or should I say, suggesting gradual changes in my diet that made a huge difference in my health, which directly affected my personality, because once that layer of my Maslowian needs were met, I was able to ascend to other layers throughout the process of my own personal self-actualization. So to start with, you can observe your own sleep and dietary habits. Right? Gradually encourage your husband to cut any junk food and choose a testosterone-friendly diet if he isn't already on one. Right? That means no tofu. All right? Once you are certain that his physiological needs are squared away, that he has no vitamin deficiencies, which you really shouldn't underestimate, because a lot of the human population is vitamin deficient in something without even realizing it. You can address the financial situation, but first get the biological squared away first. All right, moving on to the next layer of the Maslow'ian pyramid. If you can establish a priori that his nutrients are indeed in order, then you can generally discern that there is no crack in the biological foundation of his character. Like the foundation of a house, once you have a solid foundation, the rest is a matter of essentially stacking bricks. All right, if you know, or if you don't think, if you don't hope, once you know that he is physically healthy while consuming all of the nutrients he needs to produce enough testosterone and neurotransmitters like serotonin, then you can effectively deduce that the rest is in his psychological and or area of crystallized knowledge. All right, so I present the question: does he have the knowledge to seize more of the day of his career? Right. If not, then as his wife, perhaps I suggest that you start a conversation that encourages him to continue his education. Once my wife helped me to get my diet in order, when she saw me solve a complicated equation for fun on my at-home whiteboard, which there is actually a video of, she found out that I secretly had a penchant for physics. She had been secretly dating an underdeveloped physicist buried underneath the surface of a lot of childhood trauma. I did not have the self-esteem necessary to actually go out of my way to apply for any college education in physics on my own. But lo and behold, not only when I applied to a few colleges, literally every single one accepted me almost on the spot pertaining to my initial acuity tests. Elite universities too, such as the University of York, right? This was indirectly her doing. Right, her subtle influence upon my character. Right, there would be no Woven Industries if my wife hadn't gently encouraged me to return to my inner child. Right. On the other hand, if your husband does have the knowledge necessary to progress in his career, if his education, all that stuff is squared away, if he doesn't need to go back to his past to correct certain things that derailed him educationally, while being fully physically healthy with no vitamin deficiencies, then it is likely some form of trauma that he needs to work through with professional help. But ultimately, transcending to higher levels of the pyramid at later ages in life comes down to a returning to one's inner child, which I absolutely had to do myself. So where did things go wrong? All right, start a conversation with him that goes all the way back to where there was a metaphorical bone broken, and prepare for conflict. That might, depending on his personality, that might actually erupt into an argument between you and him. All right, so be careful, tread carefully. Don't be surprised if he has narcissistic defense mechanisms in the process of, returning, because it's painful. Because one's inner child is typically low self-esteem past a certain age, means that there's an inner child somewhere in there that had all the ambition, all the dreams, all the drive in the world, and it's still there. Right? No one ever loses the core of their soul, so to speak. So that is still there. It's just how much pain does this guy have to go through in order to dig through all of the defense mechanisms to uncover his inner child and bear the vulnerability, the soft pink flesh of his inner child in the cold, harsh adult world. Right. There's no way I can discern from what you've typed here accurately what his defense mechanisms may be, but expect some kind of defense mechanism. And hopefully it isn't so bad. Hopefully it doesn't lead to a violent outbreak, but be prepared. You know your husband infinitely more than I would, so you know what to expect. And so I can't speak further on that. But just know this: you may have to re-break that metaphorical bone in order for it to heal back properly. All right, so once you do that, even if it requires some level of professional help, the next level of the pyramid would be his social circle. If you've worked with your husband enough in the improvement of his being to get his sleep and diet in order while reintroducing him to reawakening his inner child, the next block will be his friends, okay, or should I say his so-called friends. And this is something I know the pain of very much. The friends he had while he was at a lower version of himself, will most likely not be able to remain in alignment with the person he has become and is becoming now that his health and core psychological traumas have been addressed, now that he's actually going somewhere in life, right? Beware. Beware. It is not your job. It is not your job to tell him whom he can and cannot hang out with pertaining to his friends and family. In the process of encouraging his masculinity, the improvement of his masculinity, the actualization of his of the masculinity that was actually always there, the best version of himself, and helping him to bring it out. Right? Remember, it's not your job to fix him. It's your job to set him up to fix himself. And ultimately, it's his decision. Right? You cannot change people. You cannot take responsibility for changing people. But what you can do is give him everything he needs. And if he has it within him, if he makes the inner decision, he will make the inner decision. And in the process of encouraging that version of him to come out, that really best self, you don't want to counterintuitively emasculate him by telling him who he can, whom he can and cannot hang out with. No, he'll figure that out on his own, right? So you want him to make his own decisions pertaining to his own contentment in life, right? And if he is truly transforming as a character from the inside out due to your gentle, subtle influence, you won't have to. You won't have to tell him, who's toxic and who's not. He'll be able to figure that out on his own, right? He will make the decision to stop hanging out with this toxic friend or family member as much on his own, because it would simply make sense for him to. It would be inhibiting his progress, because once he gets a taste of what his truest, deepest, most powerful self feels like, just a taste of it, it's addicting, right? And he will want more of that, right? So I would expect, right? I could be wrong. Who knows just how bad his own psychological damage may be, and I cannot speak on that. Right, but and so it's going to hurt him to lose friends and quite likely family as well, so-called family, depending on how you define it. Right, he will have moments of weakness and vulnerability as he starts repelling or leaving behind the people that are no longer in alignment with where he's going in life. So when you see him during these moments of weakness, do not think less of him. Be proud of him. Tell him you are proud of him. Show him how proud of him you are. It could be with sex. It could be with gifts. It could be with just general kindness, or all of the above. I leave that to you to figure out how that should play out with your own marriage. But encourage him to find better, more masculine friends. Once you reach that point, encourage him to find better, more masculine friends that are more in alignment with his developing character. With me, it turned out to be a handful of really elite, and this might sound crazy, but it's true. You can actually research them. A handful of elite, a small group of elite Scandinavian military veterans ended up being my most compatible friends. Marines and Norwegian, Canadian, American. Yeah, well, when I say Norwegian, okay, just ultimately Scandinavian in general. Military veterans turned out to be some of my greatest friends that I'm honored to have just discovered that I was most in alignment with. Right, and he'll take, in the process of figuring that out about himself, he will take care of the rest pertaining to ascending to the higher levels of the Maslowian pyramid pertaining to his own personal, contextual self-actualization. Thank you very much for the question. This is the first of, I think, many, because if I may read the post here, I'm getting a lot of questions ever since I made one post about masculinity, and everybody's like, almost my entire Facebook following wants to know more, because just send me a message, send me a DM, right? Because I know at the time this video was made, my Facebook audience and activity was very low, but my Facebook engagement and activity was very high, right? So I'm more active on Facebook than anywhere else. So if you see this video, if you're new on YouTube or wherever you may be viewing this video, send me a DM if you have a question pertaining to not just masculinity, because I don't mean to accidentally brand myself as a dating guru or anything like that, but just self-actualization in general, and how I can contribute what wisdom particularly anecdotal wisdom that you may respect and find very valuable. So I'm totally open to comments, feedback. Let me know. And if this is a direction, if you like this video and this is a new direction you'd like my YouTube channel to go in, I'm here for it. Okay? Thank you.